Well, good afternoon, everybody. I want to thank you for joining us again today. Just a really quick start, I'll always point you at the beginning of webinars, as our whole team will, to the Chamber website. So right on the top of the Chamber website, you'll see that red bar that has COVID updates. If you click on that, that will always give you the latest news, talks more about the gateway criteria for Badger Bounce Back, resources, funding opportunities, just kind of a little bit of everything. So it's good to be checking that out often. So today we are very lucky to have two different representatives from WMC. So today we have Chris Reeder, and he's the Senior Director of Workforce and Employment Policy. And then we also have Brittany Rockwell on, and Brittany is the Director of Small Business Advocacy. So Chris is going to give us a little bit of information, and Brittany's here as well to help answer questions. And Chris, again, thank you, and Brittany, for being here today.
Yeah, well, thank you for having us on, inviting us to come join you. We certainly appreciate it. You know, we do a lot of these, the staff at WMC do with chambers across the state these days, not surprisingly, trying to keep people updated on what's happening in Madison related to COVID-19, but also if you have specific topics like you all do today on Workshare, to try to give some updates to you on those topics. We're also incredibly busy at WMC doing kind of an ongoing live Q&A with employers all over the state. So certainly if you have questions that are not covered here today, or that you just don't want to ask in the group or what have you, please shoot myself or Brittany an email. You know, you can find our emails easy enough at wmc.org. We spend a lot of our time just trying to, as I'm sure Beth and Maggie do as well these days, just trying to answer questions for folks and connect you to the right people at the Department of Labor or at the Department of Workforce Development or at the SBA or what have you, to try to keep employers operating the best that they can in these times. So happy to join you, happy to answer questions, and happy to take any questions after this that you all might have. Brittany, do you want to, sorry to put you on the spot, say a little bit about kind of the SBA stuff that you handle and some of the areas there that we're doing at WMC as well?
Sure, absolutely. Like Chris said, thank you so much for having us on the call today. I'm just here to hopefully help point you in the right direction and answer questions if anything pops up as far as small business is concerned. A lot of what like Chris said, a lot of what I'm spending my time doing since all of the COVID craziness started is trying to pass along updated SBA information, whether that's for the PPP program or the EIDL program, different loans that are available, and then any state resources that are available. So that's a lot of the questions I'm getting right now. As you probably have noticed and seen, there's changes happening constantly. So I'll do my best. If I don't have an answer for you on the call, I'll try to get you either a contact that you can reach out to directly at the SBA, or I'll track down the question or the answer for the question for you. So hopefully we can be helpful together and just help support you guys today.
Great, and I'm going to apologize right now if my dog starts barking. I've got her sitting on my lap here, as you can see. I have her down in the basement with me. I thought it was the quiet spot, but she just realized that my 5-year-old is running around outside. And she is barking at him, so I'll do my best to keep her quiet. The main issue that we were asked to come on today and talk about was Workshare. So I put together a quick PowerPoint on that. I'm going to go ahead and share the screen here. Please let me know if once it's working. To kind of walk through what the Workshare program is, and I guess answer any questions that you might have on this relatively new program. Going forward. It's something that is really, it could be a really vital tool for employers to utilize in these times. Let's see here. So just make sure you all can see the screen now, right? The Workshare presentation. Okay. All right, so first, what is Workshare? Workshare is a program relatively new, as I said. It was actually created in 2013, signed into law by Governor Walker in 2013, Act 11. really it's a program that is intended to avoid layoffs by allowing employers who have a slowing in work orders to take an entire work unit. So say, a shop floor or an engineering department or something like that. And instead of having to pick losers within that work unit, instead of saying, gosh, our orders are down, so we need to lay off 7 people, what WorkShare is it allows you to basically reduce hours evenly across the board for everybody, not lay anybody off. And the state then kicks in by allowing individuals who would not otherwise be eligible for unemployment benefits to also collect unemployment benefits for the reduction in hours that they're facing. A major benefit for the workers, not only do you avoid having some of your colleagues laid off, but it also ensures that the employer maintains benefits like healthcare and retirement plans, even though people will be dropped down in their hours per week to a level that they maybe ordinarily wouldn't receive benefits from the employer. So it's a way, again, just to keep people employed, to keep your full workforce on the job, but to get a little bit of help for your workers from the state through the unemployment insurance program. The original program, and I'll get to why I'm using that phrase a little bit, the original program from Governor Walker in 2013 required that you at least have 20 workers that you put into the quote work unit, and it had to be at least 10% of that work unit's workforce, whichever one was higher. So if you had 500 people in a work unit, you had to put at least 50 of them into the plan with a minimum of 20 if it was a smaller work unit. The original program required that the hour reductions were uniform, so every employee that was part of it would have the same reduction in hours, and that reduction could range from 10% for every employee up to 50% for every employee, but it had to be the same. It was effective basically 2 weeks after approval. So it's an official plan, so you have to, or it's an official application you have to make with the state. You send it into DWD, they approve it, that takes about a week. After they approve it, originally the WorkShare program then went into effect on the second Sunday following approval. So you had time then to let your employees know, to kind of game plan what that would mean, to let them know what it meant that they were going to be going on unemployment insurance for at least part of their wages. And then importantly, it can only be utilized for 6 months every 5 years. The point of this again is to take kind of really dire times when you have a reduction in your workflow, and to help companies get through that time while protecting your workforce. A couple weeks ago, Governor Evers signed Act 185 that made some changes. And frankly, these were changes that we had asked the legislature to put forward to him. We're glad that they did, but really to make WorkShare a lot more applicable to many more employers than it had been originally. I'll note the original program, while it was signed in 2013, it really didn't get much play. I mean, there were maybe dozens at most employers in the time from 2013 to today that availed themselves of the program. It just didn't really, seem like it was something that employers really thought would be all that useful, to the extent that we probably thought it could have been if they would have used it even prior to COVID-19. But with the changes from Act 185 2 weeks ago, it is certainly applicable to just about all employers. And if you're an employer who is looking to, again, either lay people off or reduce costs during this time, we would highly recommend you take a look at this program. The changes in 185, it reduced the number of workers that you have to put into it from 20 workers and 10% down to just 2. So you can, just put 2 people into the plan now, and it will be approved. You can have a reduction in hours that can now vary by employee. So not everybody has to have the exact same reduction across the board. Although probably that's still a good idea for employee morale purposes. You don't want to say, Bob is cut 50% and Phil is only cut 10%. So probably a good idea to still keep that uniform, but you don't have to anymore. The hour reduction has been increased, and this was really driven by the federal government. The federal government upped their limits to 60% reduction. So while the original plan, you could reduce people's hours up to 50%, you could now reduce them actually up to 60%. And it's now effective the first Sunday on or after DWD approval. So if you get the plan in and it's approved on a Friday, it can be effective that immediately that following, or that Sunday, that weekend, or any Sunday after that. So you can designate it's going to be 2 or 3 or 4 weeks out that it's effective. But importantly, you can get this in, you can get it approved rather quickly within about a week, and it's effective basically the following week. Federal changes that came about through the CARES Act and the FFCRA, any unemployment insurance benefits that are paid through the work-share program will be picked up by the federal government, which means that these, the portion of benefits that employees are getting will not hit employers' accounts, so they won't hit your experience rating to raise your taxes going forward. That was a pretty important item really across the board for unemployment insurance, not only work share related. And then also importantly, workers are eligible if, an aspect of the federal government's relief for workers, as everyone is well aware, is the $600 weekly benefit that is paid on top of state benefits through July 31st. Whether or not they extend that is to be seen, but right now that runs through July 31st. If you are a worker in Wisconsin and you are eligible for even $1 of unemployment insurance, whether it's through regular unemployment insurance, you're fully unemployed, you are partially unemployed, or you're part of a work share program, if you're eligible for even $1 in a week, you get the full $600 from the federal government. So it's, really a way to really make sure that workers are not, they don't lose income during this time unless they have, I think I worked it out once, they have to be making like $190,000 a year annually or something like that in order to not come out even or even frankly ahead with that $600 weekly benefit. So this chart just kind of walks through those couple of changes, again, from the original law and Act 185. I won't spend a lot of time on that chart. So benefits payable, a big question about work share are, okay, so we're reducing our workers' hours. What are the benefits that they pick up through the unemployment insurance program? And it's pretty simple, actually. It takes the maximum weekly unemployment, well, back up a second. You take the benefits that an employee is eligible for under normal full unemployment, which for the vast majority of workers in Wisconsin, they are eligible for $370 a week if they are unemployed and eligible for unemployment benefits. The benefits paid through work share are a proration of that equates or equals the percent reduction in hours that they are handed by their, by their employer. So in the example that I'm going to work through on here, if you set up a work share plan and you give everybody a 25% reduction in hours, so you take them from 40 hours down to 30 hours, they would then be eligible through UI for 25% of 370. So they would get $92.50 in state unemployment benefits for that, 10 hours that they're not working. And then now, at least through July 31st, they would also get the $600 federal money on top of it. A question that a lot of employers have is, well, isn't this the same as just partial unemployment? Because you don't need to be part of a work share plan, part of a work share plan today to get partial unemployment. You can get that. And it's slightly different. And the reason that it's different is under partial unemployment today, you are limited in the amount of wages that you can earn or the hours that you can work to $500 per week or 32 hours. If you earn more than 500 in a week or you work more than 32 hours, you are not eligible for partial unemployment insurance benefits. And those limits are kind of thrown out in a work share plan. So again, you can have somebody who makes more than 500 in a week or works more than 32 hours, and they would still be eligible for the work share plan. That's important because if you're not part of the work share plan, and you have somebody whose hours you are reducing, but they're still earning more than 500, which if you're a white collar operation, or if you're the manufacturing plant, you're probably still going to be paying them more than 500 in the example that I gave. And in that case, they would not be eligible for UI, and then they would not be eligible for the federal money as well, either. So in order to make sure that they get partial unemployment, and also at least until July 31st are eligible for the federal CARES 600, the only way to really do that is through a work share plan. So here I worked up just a couple examples to kind of work through. So again, kind of looking the rows across, you have somebody making $20 an hour on normal full-time. And this is showing that at 40 hours for that week, they gross $800. Obviously, they're fully employed, so they don't get any UI, they don't get federal UI, they bring home $800. Under the work share example I gave of a 25% reduction, they work 30 hours a week, they earn $600, so the employer right there is saving $200. So multiply that across your workforce times however many weeks that you do this. It's a way to save significant money. And again, you can reduce their hours now up to 60%, really depending on what your needs are in the workplace. At 25% reduction here, this person would earn $92.50. They would also get the 600. So they would make, goodness, close to $500 more for that week than they would if they were fully employed. Under partial employment, again, they wouldn't be eligible for any of the benefits. If you would take their hours and drop, if they were a $15 an hour person, that's what the last row shows, then they would only gross, again, at the 30-hour mark, $450 for the week, which would make them eligible again for both of the state and the federal benefits. But as soon as they hit that $501 mark, they would become ineligible unless they're part of a work share plan. Just a couple more slides here, then get into some questions. This is a website that if you're able to write it down, or we can have Maggie or Beth email it out, that DWD has together, that just really offers a lot of one-pagers on the topic. This is also where you would go to download the application. It's where you would go to get the DWD contact information for staff in Madison that can help you fill out the application if you're interested in setting up a work share program at your place of business. And the last slide I put together just really based on some experience that we've heard from some employers that have set up the program. And that's, I want to make sure that if you decide to do this, you go into it fully aware that while it's easy, it's also going to be confusing for your workers. And I wanted to walk through what a couple of those issues are. As I mentioned before, the program, while it was created in 2013, it never had a huge influx of employers, which meant that DWD never really had a need to go in and fully automate the system. So what actually happens today is a worker so when you fill out a work share program, you have to list out every worker who's going to be part of it, including their name, their date of hire, their social security number, their wages. You put all that together on the application page and you send it in. When the worker then goes forward and files for unemployment insurance, I guess I would say there's kind of a glitch in the system, in that the system does not automatically at DWD recognize that that person is part of a work share plan. So they actually get denied on their benefits the first time they do it. And DWD manually goes in. There's nothing that you have to do from the employer's point of view, except make sure your workers are aware of it so they don't freak out. But DWD goes in and manually has to update the weekly claims of individuals who are part of a work share plan so that those checks then go out and at the right amount. And they tell us that they are doing that. But again, it's fairly new for them too. While it's been around for 7 years, they haven't really used it that much. The last report that I saw, because there is a gaining interest in this, the last report I saw from the department showed that they had 65 employers around the state that are now using this, with about 3,500 employees who are now part of the program. Again, all of whom are able to work a little bit less, apply for UI and also get the federal unemployment insurance benefit that was recently passed as part of that. So that is kind of my presentation on that. Before I'll leave this up here for my email address. Before I get to that, I just wanted to really briefly mention kind of some exciting stuff taking place for WMC today. And that's the fact that we have our Back to Business plan, which if you're not aware of what it is, you know, our Back to Business plan is a plan that we put together that we think is a way to safely open every employer in the state with proper mitigation items put into place. It allows employers really throughout the state and every community to enter some pretty basic data into a website. That website then is created in a way that it pulls together a host of information, such as what the business sector that employer is in, what their transmission risk is. So a bar or a movie theater, people are close together and they're interacting. That would have a pretty high transmission risk. A manufacturing facility where people are spread out on the shop floor, that would have a low transmission risk. It also takes a look at local population density. It takes a look at local infection rates, which are obviously constantly changing. And it takes a look at various health metrics, including hospital utilization rates at the local level and local hospital capabilities. And from that, it kind of puts together a score on an individual employer basis that we envision being something that employers could put on their front door so that their workforce and their customers know, hey, if I'm going into the Acme shop in La Crosse, they have a moderate risk factor, which is the middle ground. We kind of break it into 3 different tiers: substantial, moderate, and low. Then along with that, it will list out things that employer should be doing, whether it's on the PPE front or whether it's on other mitigation items that employer should be doing to do the best that they can following OSHA and CDC guidelines to minimize the risk to employees and to customers. It's an exciting day for us on that today because we just sent a couple things. We just sent the governor a letter earlier this afternoon where we had over 50 chambers of commerces. Thank you to the La Crosse Chamber for being one of those, and also over 20 business trade associations representing various industries throughout the state, urging the governor and the legislature to really take a serious look at that plan as something that they base the eventual actual plan that the state develops, that they look at what we put together as maybe more than a starting place. Then there's also today a public hearing that I believe is still taking place right now, a virtual public hearing, I guess, but for the Assembly State Affairs Committee. And it's a hearing on that plan. So it's a hearing on the Back to Business plan. Scott Manley, our Executive Vice President, testified virtually earlier today on the plan. And we hope, in coming days to really get some momentum behind it. Again, not that we expect the legislature and the governor to adopt it entirely and just say good to go, but at least that they take a look at the serious items that are in there to allow us to get employers back to work. I mean, we're sitting here at 19% unemployment today. We're expecting it to get close to 30% within a month. I think the projection now is 27% unemployment we're looking at. Yes, the health risks right now are very serious and real, but so are, what happens if we don't get folks back to work, not only from the economic issues that has, but frankly, health risks and other things that come along with having a third of our workforce not working. So that's all happening today. It's very exciting for us. We have a petition for it. Shameless plug quick, if you want to check it out, learn more about it, join the cause and sign the petition at wmc.org. So with that, I will, I guess, yield back, see if I can stop sharing, yield back and see what kind of questions you all might have for myself or for Brittany.
So if you have any questions, you can feel free to hit the chat button on the bottom of your screen and type in the chat space on the right, or I think it's a small enough group that you can feel free to just unmute your microphone and go ahead and ask. if anybody has any questions. While we're waiting, I have one, Chris. How are benefits impacted for work share in terms of like health insurance or things like that?
Yep, good. Really good question. Something I kind of glanced over but forgot to mention. I think I had it on one of my slides briefly, but one of the key elements of a work share plan is that you are required to keep your benefits. So it's a way to make sure, again, that if you drop employees down from 40 hours to 20 hours or to 25 hours or to something where they normally would not be eligible under your handbook for some of your benefits, you have to keep their benefits basically. So 401k, retirement plans, health insurance, that all has to be maintained at the same level as it was prior to your work share plan. Now, that being said, you can still make changes to your benefit structure if you want to, but it has to be uniform and across the board. So if you want to still, if you're in a work share plan and you decide, if you need to reduce a benefit or you want to increase a benefit or what have you, you can do that, but it has to be uniform and across the board. And you have to let DWD know that you're doing it in the midst of a work share plan. But that's really one of the key bonuses of the plan, is that it does allow or require, so for employees, it's a huge bonus that it requires benefits to be maintained.
And a question for Brittany, or an opportunity for you to share, as an advocate for small businesses, I'm guessing you've been really entrenched in SBA issues. Do you have any quick thoughts or advice, or just anything you'd like to share specifically about what you've been working on with SBA or PPP?
Yeah, sure. So the fun adventure that has been SBA during this, I keep calling it the COVID chaos, is from week to week things change. So obviously, as we deplete funds and there's no longer funds in the PPP, then this week on Monday, those funds were restored, and so there's funds again on Monday morning. So there's kind of this ongoing cycle that changes, and for any of you who are navigating that, that to be true. There's even been changes in the application process with the EIDL loans. They started one way and there was tweaks that were made a few weeks in, and so there's been a lot of keeping up with all those details. So the one thing I found is I'm trying to regularly check in with the SBA just to see, has anything changed this week? Have you tweaked this program at all? Have you been getting this question? So I'm trying to do my best to collect the questions we get and then continuously go back for the answer, because even though there's been a few times where I've had an answer and I've responded to someone, and like within the last 12 hours that answer has been adjusted or tweaked. And so that's probably been one of the biggest challenges we've faced. Right now, the EIDL program is not accepting any new applications. So that's new kind of this week, from the end of last week too. But as I mentioned, the PPP program is back up, and we don't know for how long. That's kind of been the nature of the game with this. It was as of 9:30 on Monday morning, $310 billion was put back into the program. So again, it's going to be first come, first serve. So we'll see how long that will last. That program seems to be cranking out funds significantly faster than the SBA has been able to deliver funds from the EIDL program. That's been one big complaint. Not everyone's getting funds immediately, but it does seem like with PPP that generally, if people applied quickly and were able to get access through a lender, that was a big challenge in the beginning. But if they were, then many have gotten funds or have at least been told that they will be. So they're kind of like waiting in the queue for the Treasury to like release those funds. So the Treasury Department. So that's like kind of high level, some of the stuff that's going on. One thing that's been really helpful for a lot of our members, and many of you may already, if you've been navigating PPP or EIDL, you have probably already had to do this, but I am really encouraging people to call the SBA helpline, especially if you've got an EIDL loan or you're wondering if you have one, if you haven't, you're not 100% sure you were confirmed or not. For a while, that number was very inundated. It was difficult to get through and there's really long wait times. It seems like that's shifted now and it's slowed down a little bit. But especially for individual questions, so not generalized questions, but more specific to each account or each individual, that helpline has been pretty helpful from what the feedback I've received. That number, I'll say it and then I can type it in the chat box too. That number is 1-800-659-2955. So 1-800-659-2955, and that goes directly to the SBA. That would, oh, thanks, Beth, you're great. You already put it in the chat box, you're quick. And that number would be more focused for EIDL or general SBA questions. If you have PPP questions, that's going to be a question typically for your lender because they're the ones answering those questions. So that's some helpful information. And I'll conclude with this, and then if there's specific questions, I'm happy to help. A lot of our small business members have been reaching out saying that their lender doesn't know the answer to XYZ specific PPP question. I reached out to the SBA multiple times with those kind of niche questions that we've been getting, and they have encouraged me to have that business go back to their lender and tell the lender to reach out through their helpline. So there's actually, in addition to the regular SBA helpline, there's a lender helpline. And from the feedback I've gotten from our members, that seemed to be helpful. So the lenders can reach out through a specific helpline, and the U.S. Treasury Department helps answer those questions. And they can sometimes get answers that an individual might not be able to get to as fast. I will also, while we're answering other questions, I'll grab that number and I'll put it in the chat. I don't have it right in front of me, but that's helpful. Sometimes the lender might not have it in front of them. So if you just say, hey, I got this number, would you be willing to reach out and ask this question for me? That's been helpful for some of our members. So.
Thank you for that, Brittany. Any other questions for Chris or Brittany? Feel free to unmute or go ahead and put it in the chat.
While we wait for it, if there are any, one point that I'll add to Brittany's comment on, really just using this as a great opportunity to help our members, your members navigate government, navigate the SBA or what have you. The Department of Labor and the various components of the Department of Labor, like OSHA and other bureaus there, and the SBA and others are continually putting out new guidance, trying to help answer employers' questions. I believe the latest guidance on the FFCRA, for instance, is at 88 different very specific questions that they have answered for employers. To be frank, a number of those items that they get are items that they answer because they hear them from us and from you and from other chambers across the country. There are some very niche ones that I know were answered specifically because we asked them because they were so specific. So if you do have questions, even if we can't get the answer, or if the answer is not known right now, we'll run that up the flagpole at the Department of Labor, and they're doing their best, and I'd say in a pretty impressive way at offering guidance quickly as new topics emerge. And I had one just yesterday that I forwarded on to our contact at the Department of Labor, and his response was basically, haven't thought of that one yet. So they're working on it now. They're trying to figure out guidance for a brand new question. Think of these laws. These laws were passed 3 weeks ago or whatever it was, and the departments either at the federal or the state level, have to figure out what they all mean afterwards. So they're trying to do that. As you have questions that we can get that to them, that will help influence, hopefully in a positive way, what they say those laws actually mean. So please keep questions coming, filter them through the cross chamber to us, reach out directly, whatever. It's been helpful, I think, to get Wisconsin questions before the departments to kind of make them answer them, and they have been. So I'm gonna put that plug out there no question is too stupid, it seems, in these times.
Sounds good. Well, thank you both to Chris and Brittany from WMC. And just one quick reminder. So tomorrow we are having a little change of pace for our webinar. So we're calling it Open Mic for Business Leaders, a forum. And it's an opportunity for you to learn a little bit more about what we know that's new, and for you to learn more about what chamber efforts are underway. There are new things we're talking about all the time. And it's really an opportunity to listen to our members talk about their successes or their challenges or their ideas, plans that you have to kind of reopen and reboot. If you're not able to make that webinar, which is tomorrow morning at 10, so it's different from our usual 3 p.m., you are, of course, always free to reach out to us by phone or email our info@lacrossechamber.com, and we'll be more than happy to reach out to you or just listen to you and hear what you're thinking. So thank you to Chris and Brittany again, and thanks to everybody that joined us, and I hope you have a good night. Thanks.